Thank you, and welcome to the June 23rd, 2021 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Irvin?
Present.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Present.
Commissioner Roberts?
Present.
Commissioner Song?
Present.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Here.
Chair Wormick?
Present.
6 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, June 17th. Our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 It passes unanimously. At this point, we have a public hearing and public comments. The time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes will be allowed for each speaker. Testimony for public hearing may be offered at this time. Members who would like to comment on 1A or 1B are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Moving on to the consent calendar, we have 2 items on the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of May 26, 2021, and 1B King's Garden, Inc. requesting a parcel waiver map for the merger of 6 parcels into 1 parcel to allow for the proposed expansion of an existing cannabis cultivation facility located at 63795 19th Avenue. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Chair Wormick?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
And Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
The next item is a public hearing item. It is 2A King's Garden, Inc. for a conditional use permit application for the expansion of an existing type 3A and type 4 cannabis cultivation facility from a 37,787 square foot building to 3 buildings totaling 212 and 27 square feet along with a 5,650 square foot warehouse located at 63795 19th Avenue in zone M2 and within the cannabis overlay zone. Can we have a staff report? And I've just asked for, with the staff report, a report from our odor consultant and also from Veronica Gohart to explain the new steps that our code enforcement will be taking.
All right, thank you, Chair Wormick and members of the Planning Commission. So as stated, it is a conditional use permit application, and it is for a type 3B and type 4 cannabis cultivation facility. And I also want to reiterate that this is an expansion to an existing cultivation facility. So currently there is a building which is 37,787 square foot. Now, this application is to expand that facility to 212,027 square feet cannabis cultivation facility. The site is zoned M2, so the use is permitted by the code. And also that site is within the cannabis overlay zone. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared, and it is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt the MND. There were two mitigation measures that were recommended, specifically in the biological and cultural resources. And also an odor control plan was submitted for review. It was reviewed by the city's consultant and also approved. Now, I would like to share my screen so I can go over some of the plans with the commission. Okay, can we all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So as I've mentioned, these are just the highlights of the application. It is an expansion. The CUP is for an expansion of an existing facility. This is an aerial of the site of this is the site. The existing building is right here. And these are the parcels that you've just approved a parcel map waiver for. The merger of these lots will allow the construction of the 3 new buildings. And as I also stated, the area is surrounded by very similar uses. They are mostly energy related and other light industrial uses, and then windmills in the immediate surrounding areas. It is north of the I-10 freeway. There are no residencies or any of the protected uses as identified in our code within 1,000 feet of this location. And this is the site plan of the area. Again, this is the building 1. That's the existing building. These are the 2 new 2-story buildings. It is 87,120 square foot each. And this is the warehouse. It's only 5,560 square foot warehouse. These are the floor plans. So there is the first and the second floor of the floor plans. This is the floor plan of building 3, just about the same layout as as building 2. And these are the roof plans, the 2 buildings. So these are the cross sections showing how the interior will look like on these 2. And these are this is how it will look like. This is the rendering of the new additions once completed. And these are additional elevations of the buildings. These are more elevations of building 3. And again, these are just some of the features of the odor control plan. And as I mentioned earlier, it was reviewed by the city's consultant and it was approved. Some of the highlights will include that all process and any odorous areas with non-emergency exhaust shall be directed towards the anteroom location prior to final air discharge. All of these are contained in the staff report, so I don't want to bore you by going through them one by one, but these are some of the main features of the odor control plan. And I just want to take a minute to talk about the wastewater treatment. As you may recall, again, this site is located in the north of the city, and there is currently no city sewage system in that part of the city. And so even the existing building there does not have its own, doesn't have a sewage system, but they are currently using a septic system in that area. So with the new addition to that site, the applicant has indicated that there will be new 2 additional septic tanks that will be located in the area. Again, Mission Springs Water District has jurisdiction over wastewater in that area. they were routed these plans, and the project, they reviewed it and provided some conditional use, some conditions that are attached to your staff report. There are about 11 of them, but these are the main highlights that all plans will be submitted to them for review prior to any connections. And there are 2 additional conditions that are attached to this proposal. It was also evaluated in the mitigated negative declaration. So you will find more of this. In addition to that, the city's engineering department also added another condition relative to wastewater treatment at the site. These are just pictures of the existing conditions at the site. This upper left picture is the existing building, which is the current facility. So is this, and these are just the surrounding areas of the building, undeveloped as it is now, but once the manager that you just approved will allow the development of the 2 additional buildings. In summary, staff made all the 5 required findings in support of the CUP. The use conforms to separation distance as required by the code. The odor control plan was reviewed and approved, and the impact of any odor-related impacts will be reduced as a result of the odor control plan. The use conforms to the criteria for the approval of a CUP, and also it is within the site is within the cannabis overlay zone. As I mentioned earlier, because of the size of the proposed use, a mitigated negative declaration was prepared under CEQA guidelines, and staff is recommending to the Planning Commission to adopt the MND and approve the conditional use permit subject to all the conditions that are attached. And should the commission approve the project, if there are additional conditions that you may want staff to add to it, yes, staff could be prepared to do that. That will conclude my staff report. It is a public hearing. The applicants are also here. They are available to answer any of your questions. Again, staff recommendation is for the approval of this use. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before we go to public hearing, if the questions of staff, and I would like, if the odor consultant is present and Ms. Goodhart is present, just a few questions from them. Commissioner Hirschbein.
Thank you. Is there a requirement under planning or building department regulations to provide solar power here?
No, we do not have such a specific requirements, no.
And could the Planning Commission impose that requirement?
I will leave that up to the city attorney. I will let the city attorney address that.
I believe I can address that, Madam Chair, members of the commission, good evening. If there is a specific land use impact that you are seeking to address with a condition of approval, you could impose a condition of approval to address that. For example, if there was excessive odor, if there's excessive noise, if there's something where you could condition it further, you could do that. But you cannot use land use conditions for a specific project to make changes in policy. That would have to come from the council. So if the city wants to move in a direction of having these projects have solar as a policy matter, that would have to be done through the code amendment process, not site-specific conditions.
So that was a no.
That would be no.
Thank you. And regarding the current building there, is that currently being used to cultivate marijuana?
Yes, sir, it is. It is a cultivation facility currently.
And it's being used. And have there been any complaints lodged against that user?
Very good question. And I looked into that. I'm not aware of any. Perhaps the Director of Special Programs Compliance will have any addition to that, but no, I'm not aware of any complaints.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Goodhart could answer that.
We confirmed with the police department today, there's been no complaints received there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there other questions, Commissioner Roberts? Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also had the same question that Commissioner Hirschbein did about solar. I'm wondering why we are not requiring solar on these facilities. It's the perfect environment for solar. And Jim, I'm also not challenging you, but it seems to me that we are able to impose environmental fixes on these projects. So I'm a little bit surprised you're calling this a policy issue. This, to me, seems more about energy usage and environment. So are you absolutely sure that we can't impose any requirement? We certainly have imposed these requirements on residential developments over and over again. So it surprises me that we can't impose that requirement on a facility like this.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Madam Chair, solar for residential, that policy call has been made at the state level with the building code that solar is required on residences. There is not a similar requirement that I'm aware of on commercial properties at this point. But that policy call on the state and possibly on the local level has been made to have solar on residential. I'm not saying it's impossible or illegal to do it, not at all. I'm saying that it's a policy issue that needs to be addressed by city ordinance that would apply to these projects across the board. But unless you can show that this project has some sort of, special or unique land use impact that we need a condition to address, I don't believe that you could condition this to have solar. Again, it could be a policy issue, and if you wish to bring it to the council and have the council consider an ordinance, you could certainly do that. But unless you can show me a specific situation with this property beyond just general energy use policy, I do not believe that you could condition this to have solar.
Commissioner Hirschbein, and I want to speak to that.
So to Commissioner Roberts' point, and this is one of the benefits of being on the commission for ages, is that prior to there being code requirements to provide a certain amount of solar energy in a residential unit, Planning Commission was imposing that requirement and it was being accepted. So at that point, historically, the policy from council had not come down, but the Planning Commission was able to require that and it was enforced.
Well, I can't speak to prior conditions or prior enforcement. That's my read on the law, is that solar cannot just be imposed as a condition unless, again, there are facts specific to this application that show that there's an impact that needs to be addressed here. Again, if this is energy usage policy, our office's position is that would have to come through an ordinance that would apply to these projects on a more uniform basis as opposed to site specific.
Are there other questions? We can deal with this more when we get to the commission's discussion of the issue. Are there other questions of staff? I have a few. I was wondering if the city engineer could explain a little more on what the sewer requirements are. That's important to me for the looking at the mitigated negative deck.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Currently, the city, as you know, does not have any sewer facilities in the area. It is within the service area for Mission Springs Water District, which they do not currently have any city sewer facilities there either. But what you do have is this facility would be required to put in a septic system. And in that area is the oversight for the groundwater protection area is the Department of Water Resources. And the Department of Water Resources also gets to look at this facility, and they will impose that the facility has an on-site sewer batch plant, which basically is a small mini treatment plant on site before it reaches its septic system and goes on its natural path. That's something that they have to get cleared through Department of Water Resources. The health department proved to us that that's all been approved, and it gets permitted by our building department. In addition to that, if Mission Springs Water is requiring that they put in stub outs and that sort of thing for future use, that is something that the developer would be responsible for between the developer and Mission Springs Water. It's not something that the city would regulate.
Will it protect our aquifer?
That's what the purpose of the Department of Water Resources is for. The batch plants are to try to reduce the amount of contaminants that are reaching the aquifer below because of the amount of septic tanks in the area.
That's just a very important issue when I'm looking.
Yeah, we're imposing that same condition on all projects north of the 10.
Excellent. And then the question on the stub outs, is that stub outs when the sewer does come out there?
Correct.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have one other question of positive, but is this the same applicant or the same company that has had the 90% of the complaints at the Anza facility?
We only have one large cultivation facility in operation at this time. So the complaints have been either illegal or for their facility.
So, but they do own that facility.
Yes.
That has the complaints. And are you satisfied with the enforcement on that facility to clean that up?
They have been working actively with our odor control consultants. And as of 2 days ago, I did confirm with 15,000, they are having those conversations to continue to make the improvements. They're rather large improvements is why they haven't been done quickly, because they want to be done correctly.
Thank you. And what I'd like you to do, I don't think it's germane to this facility, but possibly if you would stay past this case and stay to talk to us a little bit about the new code enforcement.
Yes, I will.
I don't think we should include that in this discussion, but I'd very much like you to address it. I think those are my questions.
Madam Chair, if I may add something really quick. Getting back to Mr. Hirschbein's question earlier, Mr. Newell just provided me a copy of the City Council policy statement from January 2018, which appears to be a policy statement on photovoltaic solar systems on single family and multi-family residential. Now, again, it was before my time. I can't speak to applications that came before that policy, but there does appear to be a policy statement by the council on residential solar, which appears consistent with what we have on the state level with the building codes. But I'm not aware of anything for commercial buildings at this time.
I'm surprised to hear that, Madam Chair. I believe we did put in verbiage about commercial.
And we were we had enforceable items much prior to 2018. The City Council was following requirements that the commission had made.
Okay. Well, I can look into this further if you'd like, Madam Chair. But
if you could now, because I know that we have been very focused on sustainability, and including setting up our own facility to deliver sustainable energy to the city. So it would be, it may be a broader policy. And I would like you to look into it.
Okay. I can certainly do that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there other questions before we go? Is the odor consultant here?
Yes, Madam Chair, he is present.
Could he just very quickly, I know he's approved this, very quickly explain to us how it works with these 3 buildings? I know each odor plan is a little different.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Madam Chair. The buildings will operate similarly. They're each their own unique building, obviously. If you recall the last Planning Commission meeting, this system is virtually identical to the odor mitigation procedures of the last one. What they're doing here is relying on an anti-room that is always being kept at a minimum negative pressure in order to pressure cascade all of the extra odor that might be in the building, control it into one area. It is contained and then mitigated through a carbon filter and then diluted with atmospheric air to a 7:1 ratio before it's discharged to the environment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there being no other questions, the public hearing is open. The applicant has 10 minutes. And then are there members of the public who have asked to speak?
None have reached out to me, Madam Chair.
The applicant has 10 minutes and then they will have 3 minutes for rebuttal. If the applicant would stay for questions before we close the public hearing.
Hello, I'm Gary LaSalle with Kings Garden, the applicant for this project. I appreciate all of your guys' help, Edward's help. There we go. There I am. Sorry about that. Appreciate everything. Thanks for meeting with us tonight. Everything that Edward presented and all of your questions are extremely valid. 1500 Inc. explained the odor control, which we take very seriously on this. Step back a little bit on our ANSA project. We are in plan check now for completing all of the recommended odor control and HVAC changes. Our existing system was grandfathered in. It was one of the first facilities in Palm Springs. Of course, things progress. That system just did not seem to be doing what our new systems are capable of. Thus, the reason why we haven't had any complaints at our facilities north of the 10. I just wanted to clarify one thing on the sewer and the septic. It's not shown on the plans and will obviously be shown on the building submittals. But our cannabis facilities are a zero waste facility. So basically what that means is all of our runoff, whether it be from our fertigation systems of watering the plants, the condensation that's generated from the air conditionings, all of that is recaptured. We send it through filters, a series of RO filters, ozone machines and whatnot, and it gets reused into our facilities. Basically using roughly 70% less city water than what you would normally use. The remnants of that, or the waste, gets hauled off by a third-party recycling company at any given time, whatever our schedules are for that. So any residue or whatnot that comes from our cannabis cultivation does not go down into the septic tanks. It does not go down. It will not go down into the sewer if it ever comes about into our neighborhood. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there because it is a good environmentally friendly system that we use. It's one of the one there at that existing building was the first and largest one in the United States from my knowledge. And it's only grown since then. So we do have that going into these two buildings as well. That's pretty much what I have. Again, odor control, I know it's a hot topic. something that we take very seriously with the help of Jay and his group at 1500 Inc. And what they recommend and the city's guidelines. It's pretty much going to be odor free. Thank you.
Are there, is that your entire presentation?
I think so. And I'm definitely here for questions and answers. Again, we appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and we're a good citizen with Palm Springs. Palm Springs is a very valued jurisdiction for us. This is our roots. We came from here, and look forward to our continued relationship.
Questions for the applicant from the commission? And please be aware that I can't see all of your photos. If we could take this off the screen, I might be able to. Great. Questions from the commission? No hands raised. Oh, Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. LaSalle, how many trash enclosures do you plan to have on the site? I see one new enclosure.
Yeah, there's one new enclosure just for typical garbage, house garbage, so to speak. To the east of building 3, there's an area that's there for roll-off containers, approximately 4 40-yard containers for our waste. One, our recycled waste, in a sense, to where we actually run it through for lack of better words, a chipping process where we mix the cannabis with soil so it's non-usable and whatnot. And then that gets hauled off by Palm Springs Disposal.
So the trash enclosure is being used for specifically for this debris from the cultivation. In other words, it's not your normal Monday morning pickup. It's a special pickup.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Number 2 is, so the entry to the site is really now going to be from Newhall. Is that correct?
No, it was kind of determined that the best point of entry is going to remain on 19th. The 2 gates that are on Newhall are going to be exit only.
I see. And then the next question was, do you plan to have any improvements to your building number 1?
Not necessarily yet. We do have a permit, and actually all of the material's been ordered. We are putting up a windscreen around the entire building to hide all of the existing air conditionings on that building. That's been permitted. Hopefully, steel's kind of been up and down in this economic system that we have. And it hopefully in the next 2 months, we'll probably get started on that. But that would be the only improvement on that one at this time, other than landscape that's going to be implemented with this project.
Okay, and on the landscape, how often do you plan to maintain it?
Weekly. We maintain our facilities weekly.
Okay, and then the reason why you have this system for zero waste, that's really a mandate from the state of California, or is that something that your company does?
It's something that we do, and it's something that is definitely coming down the pipe from the state. I haven't seen any legislation yet that it is mandated by them, but it is something that we know is happening. We implemented it there at that existing facility. We implemented it at our other facility here on McLean Street, and the other facilities that we've got, coming down the pipe later on. It's something that we definitely put into our projects just because we know it's going to happen.
I see. And then last question is for building 3 and building 2. Would you be open to increasing the height of the parapet to screen the mechanical units rather than building a secondary windscreen?
I'm definitely open to it. There was discussion on that. I think because of the heights of the buildings, and I'll let the architect Melvin McGee maybe answer that question. But I believe that there might have been some structural stuff that went along with that that would not necessarily be so cost inducive for what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roberts, but also if your architect is here and could answer.
Yeah, I am. How do I get on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did you at any time consider a solar energy for your project?
Good question. My background, electrical contracting, solar installation, we've done some very large, in my old company, some large solar projects. And when I came into this industry, I was thinking that this is going to be a really big win for me, selling solar. Unfortunately, the amount of power that these facilities require to use, HVAC lighting and whatnot, the amount of solar that's needed in order to compensate a fraction of the power that's used would take acres of solar in order to do it. Rooftop isn't an option because our rooftops are being used up with all of our HVAC units. So yeah, solar is definitely, it's something that I like, but on a facility of that magnitude, we would need another 10 acres, if not more, of a ground mount system to even compensate 20% of what that power is used.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, the architect, please. I'm sorry, your name caption went off the screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just to address the parapet height, the maximum height of the building is because of the use of the building, we have a lot of height in the 2 stories. And so in some cases, we're reaching the maximum height that's allowed for the parapets, and the mechanical equipment is beyond that height. So the parapets we couldn't make those high enough to cover the mechanical equipment.
Perhaps if Mr. Newell could respond to that.
So the city does allow parapets to exceed the height limit. Typically, that would be for parapets that are moved away from the edge of the roof, so as not to add bulk to the structure. So in this case, they might consider having a separate parapet to screen that rooftop equipment that would be pulled off of the edge of the roof to extend higher than the 40-foot maximum.
That's essentially what we're doing and we're proposing. If there's an objection that it's a different material, maybe that's the objection, but that's exactly what we're proposing. So the roof screen is set back from the face of the building, and it doesn't increase the mass of the building by having that, except for the additional height of the screen itself.
So yeah, correct. It could extend higher than the roof height under our code.
So what different material are you using?
We're using a corrugated metal.
So I have a few things to say, but I believe that it should be during discussion. Or Madam Chair, should I bring that up now?
If there are questions you want to ask the applicant, this is what you should be bringing up now. If it's discussion, you should save it.
Thank you.
I have a question. Commissioner Hirschbein, yes.
So regarding the rooftop and the possibility of using it for solar. All those little squares on the roof, do those indicate rooftop package units?
Correct. Those are all 10-ton split system HVAC units.
Okay. And having a little bit of experience in conditioning large scale buildings, mainly shopping centers, those are not often the most efficient HVAC system. They reduce the cost because you don't have a lot of duct work. But have you looked, when your mechanical engineer was designing the building, did they look at having cooling towers, central system?
Yeah, we've looked into that. It doesn't fit our model on how we cultivate, how we grow, how the controlled atmosphere that we need in each room. We need the redundancy. If a cooling tower goes down, it affects several rooms at one time, from whether it goes down for maintenance or whatnot. We like to have a controlled atmosphere in each room. That's our model. That's how we grow our product. And using the package units or rooftop units, condenser and interior air handler, that's how we have to grow our product. Using cooling towers and whatnot just doesn't meet what we have to have.
Okay. Well, it's a little vague, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on the ANSWER project. What's your timeline for completing those repairs? It's been one of the major headaches we've had in the city is the odors that escape from that facility.
Correct. Currently, we're in plan check. I just received my first round of corrections back from your third-party plan reviewer today. It's going to take about 7 days to turn those corrections back around, pending if we don't get any other corrections, which typically there'll be one more round. Probably we're in June, July, August is probably when we'll start doing those changes. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be replacing close to 200 tons of air conditioning on that building. It's while we're staying operational. Veronica's aware of the stuff that we've gone on with the city and the agreements that we came to with them on how we are going to go about doing that. In addition, we're upgrading all of our odor control to the newest and latest technologies that we're implementing on these new buildings as well. So as soon as we get those plan check corrections and get permit in hand, we will get moving on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have one more item for the commission. We have the mitigated negative deck. Does anybody, Nicole Christ is present. Would anybody like to hear a report from her or have questions of her? Commissioner Maruzzi, is that a yes?
Yes.
Ms. Christ, if you're here,
Hello, Madam Chair.
Hello, are you by the ocean or is that just a beautiful background?
That is my wishful thinking, ma'am.
The question I have just relates to both. One is biological, again, the other is cultural resources. These seem to be pretty standard. The cultural resources has to do with whether or not any tribal remains or whatever are discovered during the excavation. So there will be an expert on site during that part. And the other has to do with whatever impacts there might be on biological resources. And those seem fairly standard too. Is there anything unique about this site that you were addressing with these mitigations?
No, sir. The mitigations are very much standard mitigations for, in the case of biology, it's for nesting birds. In the case of cultural resources, as you know, the valley is rich in cultural resources, and the monitoring has become pretty much a standard mitigation for initial studies.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions of Ms. Christ? I just wanted to compliment you on a very thorough and helpful report. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
With that, there being no more questions, the public hearing is closed and the matter is before the commission. There being a lot of discussion. Okay, there is some discussion. Commissioner Song, is that a motion with discussion or?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so I move to approve the project with the following conditions: that the project should be reviewed and conditioned with the Sustainability Commission. I did not see any conditions from that commission, or maybe I am ahead of time in the sequence of review. Second, and that involves trash enclosure, both for green waste or recycle, as well as specific waste generated by this project site and use. Second, when it comes to the parapet, this will be the only project I'll be able to say this. This is an industrial project, therefore massing is a different approach than when it comes to downtown, when it comes to housing. By increasing this parapet for a couple of feet or 3 feet and making that wall continuous, it will be a much cleaner look than having a setback parapet. And what's important about this site, even though it's an industrial zone, that the buildings do clean and do look industrial. The third condition is that if we can have a maintenance landscape plan, and I understand it's a very windy zone, so it's not about keeping the landscape upright, but keeping them irrigated so that the plants are well fed. That's what I have right now.
So before we ask for a second, can you explain your first condition regarding the Sustainability Commission? I'm not sure I understand that.
Okay, so the Sustainability Commission reviews how waste is being handled from any commercial or residential sites. So therefore, there is, for example, a recycle bin that's for boxes or aluminum goods that is separated from the brown waste. And so I would like for them to review this project because it's a substantially large project in which we only have a trash enclosure of 2 bins, in which those bins are being used for specific waste.
Understanding is you would like the Sustainability Commission to review this for the waste disposal only.
Correct. And not the biohazard or the treated waste, but the normal business waste.
Okay, so the 3 conditions are a landscape maintenance plan provided to staff that staff accepts,
Correct.
and a review and additional waste facilities, but a review of the appropriate size of those facilities by the Sustainability Commission. David, is that normal that the Sustainability Commission would review that, or can staff do that?
We can take it to, it's not normal to have the Sustainability Commission review it, but we can certainly take the item before the commission for recommendations, and then ultimately staff can implement those.
So you can based on their recommendations. And the third is that the parapet be continuous and not recessed.
With a different material.
And the same material, not a different material. And David, can we do that within the rules that we have?
Yes, it is up to the discretion of the Planning Commission or the Director of Planning how high the parapet can be. So if the commission determines that the the proposed or the exterior wall serve as the parapet as opposed to a separate screen material, that's fine.
Okay. So we have 3 conditions. We haven't discussed the solar condition is the commit, before I allow a second on this and let it go forward, I just want to make sure that that we've had the discussion we need to have on solar, or is that a separate discussion given the applicant's responses about what would be needed? Commissioner Roberts, can I ask you to speak on this?
Specifically on what question, though?
I'm wondering, did you have any additional comments on solar after the responses of the applicant?
Well, I'm disappointed that we're not using the solar. I'm disappointed that the applicant isn't taking at least what he can from the solar panels that could be put on top of these structures. It seems to me they could probably get more power than they're guessing. And I think it's an issue that we need to look at. I'm also disappointed that we can't impose that condition. I think it's very much a council goal, and it has been a city council goal for many years. And I'm surprised that we don't have that ability here. We could. Especially given that the city now supports alternative power sources. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I'm just not sure that we necessarily will accept this opinion from our city attorney. So that was the question I wanted to ask. Commissioner.
So I guess I'm simply expressing that I'm disappointed, and I agree with you. I would like I would like Jim to dig a little deeper into this and make sure there aren't any other options. My concern is that if we approve this and send this on its way, we won't have the ability to add those conditions should they actually be available to us.
Commissioner Hirschbein has his hand up. I'm going to take that as defer our opinion on this.
Unfortunately, my internet went down for the couple of minutes at the beginning of that comment, but based on what I heard Commissioner Roberts saying, I think we're looking again at the possibility of rooftop solar. Is that right?
Yes.
So can I comment on that?
Please.
Okay, thank you. So I have 2 comments. One is, I am pretty sure we were requiring rooftop solar on residential prior to any policy statement by council. I'm pretty sure of that. I mean, my memory's not perfect.
We were.
I think we were. So that kind of negates the city attorney's argument. And I'd like to see if there's a precedent based on that set of events that we did it prior to city council policy, because, it's all about consistency in the law, right? I mean, I'm not a land use attorney, but I do know that we look at prior actions as guiding principles. And also, I had another thought. We're requiring an on-site water treatment plant, and based on what the applicant's telling us, there is no discharge of water, virtually none. So if we can require that as a mitigation to the environmental effects, why couldn't we mandate solar as mitigating environmental effects? That's just, to justify the solar requirement. And then as far as the roof, I did some quick math. And again, I'm not a solar installation expert, but there's about 5 acres of roof in the 212,000 square feet. So that's 5 acres of roof and whatever else is on the ground as being able to contribute to an array field. And, the statement that central systems fail and they need to have constant power. Well, central systems are used by hospitals, they're used by office buildings, they're used by very sensitive facilities all over the world, really. So unless there's a mechanical engineer that's willing to testify that central systems are inherently subject to failure, I'm not totally buying the argument that he has to have this large array of rooftop split systems or package units.
Our odor control consultant had his hand up and wanted to offer a comment. I would like to let him comment at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to address the Commissioner Hirschbein's comments regarding the differences in HVAC systems. He's ultimately correct in the sense that there is no necessarily greater maintenance need in a central plant system utilizing a chiller and a cooling tower and a boiler. However, the energy use of, to address the solar component of it, the energy use of a cannabis cultivation facility, especially a two-tiered, two-story facility on a per square footage basis, is about a 50 to 80 times the amount of energy. So to be able to offset the 5 acres of roof area that you would normally have for a normal building, which would suffice, it would still only be a fraction of the power consumption. I can also speak quickly to the state's requirement. There are no current requirements on the state level regarding solar for any commercial projects of this nature. That's not to say that it is not coming down the pike, because it is. California has an adopted NZE, net zero energy policy, that they're fashioning into a zero energy or zero carbon policy. And those implementations begin in 2030. Those implementations also begin on a residential level. The state codes bifurcate down the residential and non-residential lines, and commercial lags behind residential because the greatest impact is through residential. So when cities make ordinances regarding solar power for residential, it's because you can have the greatest impact, and it's slower for sometimes commerce to follow up. But for AC systems, no, it's harder to maintain. It's more difficult to maintain a central plant system because the technical expertise required to do so is higher. The systems that Kings Garden is proposing are pretty standard for the industry. And from an energy use consumption, those energy efficiencies are skyrocketing every day, and they're very close to what a built-up chilled water system is right now.
The city engineer also had a comment.
Hello, I would just like to make a comment about what Commissioner Hirschbein made a comment about, is that the city had the ability to impose the on-site treatment plant. I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on this. It's not something that the city is imposed in our conditions. It's something that the Department of Water Resources has imposed that everybody do north of the 10 freeway, and they've asked the city to impose that on their behalf.
Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Coming back to the solar issue, question, David, is this going back before the City Council for final approval?
No, the approval would end here unless appealed.
Unless appealed. Otherwise, our action is the final action on this?
Correct.
Okay. My question is next to you, Madam Chair. How do we spend a little bit more time on this solar issue before we let it go? How do we not slow down this project? I don't want to make the applicant miserable here, but at the same time, I do want us to spend more time on the solar issue. Sustainability has always been a huge priority for the city. And I very much respect the professional opinions that we've had from a number of people here, but a percentage of solar-derived power is better than no solar-derived power. And I'd like us to be more clear on how we can deal with that.
I'm not sure that we can deal with it in this instance without slowing this project down?
Quick question. In Commissioner Song's action, I was a little confused. Are we in fact sending this to sustainability for comment or advice?
We would be doing an approval and leaving it up to staff to determine the amount of, I believe we'd be allowing staff to determine how the waste is being handled based on their asking sustainability for an opinion.
So my question about going to sustainability would be about solar. So I guess we're apples and oranges there.
Yeah, Madam Chair, what we have is for the recommendation or the action before you is to have the Sustainability Commission review specifically the waste generated from the operation of the business and how that is handled through the different trash enclosures on the property. That's the specific direction that we have from the motion. If the commission wants to impose a requirement related to solar, the commission could do so. I think the challenge will be if we choose to establish a percentage that can be arbitrary, and we can't really suggest that without knowing how that might impact the rooftop mechanical that's required for this use. So perhaps it's that they include some solar for the project so that at least the system is in place on the building. And as far as the extent of that, that would have to be determined.
My concern with that is if we're that vague in the condition, why couldn't 2 panels be set on the corner of the roof somewhere to comply with that condition? I certainly appreciate that we need to respect their other conditions with respect to HVAC and other things. But if we're going to go down the solar road, I want it to be meaningful and have an impact. And so far, nothing has been said here that proves to me we can't.
The problem is this application, without this having been a standard condition, we have very standard conditions that we have imposed specifically on projects, but they've been imposable. Like in the last year, we required the 3-month, 6-month, and then 1 year thereafter check on the odor control system and the mechanical scrub. And we have imposed that. We have imposed showers. We have imposed bike racks. But those things have generally been understood so that the applicant can walk away with an approval from us and know what they have to do. And I don't feel in this instance, I don't know that I could vote for imposing solar on this project as a new condition, but I would like to review and see if we can do it in the future. That's kind of, and I'm very in favor of doing solar, but it's more understandable to me to impose it on the rooftop of a house, because I know how it went on my house, than to impose it on a facility that for their business model needs to protect the HVAC in every grow room. So before we, and Commissioner Marucci in a second, but David, is there a process that we can go through to look at imposing a new condition where we have a study session on what we can do in these instances in the future?
Yes, Madam Chair, we can certainly schedule a study session for the commission to review policy recommendations specific to non-residential. And we would need to explore whatever legal matters that need to be addressed as a part of that. And so that we have all that information available to you so that we make sure we're following the law as well as, implementing the sustainability goals that we want to
And
implement.
we could do that in conjunction with the Sustainability Commission and look at that. I think that's the better route for us, but Commissioner Maruzzi had a question, then I'll let other people respond to my suggestion.
As I wanted to second the motion, but with the reasoning that, Madam Chair, that you have given, I agree with the process, and that is why I want to second the motion.
Commissioner Roberts, do you have a different suggestion?
Well, I may be alone in this, and I understand that. One option would be to impose a condition of solar and then have it appealed to City Council. It's not something I like to do, and it really slows down an applicant, and that's not what I'm out to do here. So beyond moving forward with an approval, well, perhaps there's a way we can move on with an approval that also gives our staff a few more days to research this prior to getting the final stamp. And I don't know if we are even able to give an approval like that. I know that it would be very unusual. I hold myself, partially responsible for not asking these questions prior to the meeting. Normally, I feel it's our job to do that, but this one got by me.
And it hadn't been brought up to me to raise it with staff.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Well, couple things. I'm not sure. I was thinking about solar before the meeting. It didn't occur to me that we should bring it up to staff before the meeting. I guess we should start bringing up our concerns to staff before meetings, although that's not been what I've done in the past.
I've heard from commissioners and raised issues with staff, so that's what I do the day before the meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what would have led to a different outcome of your thinking, but I'll just say that I think it's important that the project minimize its carbon footprint and provide as much solar power as it can. And I believe some of these things are I'm not convinced that there's these impediments that to that. I think central plant is a perfectly acceptable way to cool and heat a building. It's standard. You go to lots and lots of buildings of this size, 200,000 square feet, all over the world, and they have central plants. Hospitals condition and warm individual little rooms, analogous to these grow rooms. So I don't see that as an impediment. Like I said, there's 5 acres of roof and there's a large parking lot. And I believe, given that my recollection is that we've imposed solar prior to council's direction. And also, if you look at this water treatment plan, I don't believe council's directed, our city staff to provide a water treatment plant, but is requiring that. So I think there's legal ways around that as well. So unless there's a solar requirement for this project, I'll be. And also, let me just say that delaying this project by 2 or 3 weeks, a month, it's not the end of the world, This is a big project. It has a big impact, and I'm willing to get it right.
Can we get an advisory from council or from city council? Is there a process by which we can get?
Madam Chair, I don't know that. I mean, we could always agendize something for the council to get their thoughts on it. We could also prepare, a legal analysis if the commission would like, and we could bring that back at a later time. Those would be the ways I would see it. It would be challenging, I think, to bring this to the council and try to impose this on this particular project absent some sort of a council policy, an actual written policy. I would note, by the way, there's a comment made about the water treatment plant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Newell or Mr. Robertson, but I believe that was actually analyzed in our CEQA documents and was identified as a site-specific impact to be mitigated. And I understand what the applicant said this evening, but the city's analysis concluded there was a site-specific land use impact that was being mitigated through the requirement of this treatment plant. That's different than rooftop solar, which was not identified as a site-specific impact, that there's not enough power or inability to get power or some other impact like that. This was a generalized policy. And again, in the interest of sustainability, there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's put into a policy and then implemented across the board.
Let me just ask if there's a superseding motion because I have a motion and a second. We have had discussion. Does anybody have a superseding motion? Commissioner Roberts?
Do we not need to vote on the first motion?
No.
Or do you want a second motion?
If you want to continue with this issue, you need to make a second motion.
So what I would do is ask the maker of the motion to amend the motion to add a solar requirement to this. And the solar requirement, that the applicant come back to us with a solar power plan that uses all available area for solar panels to have this be a significant addition. And I would ask for an amendment.
Madam Chair, could I just get clarification from Mr. Roberts? So this would be continuance of the application, continuance of the hearing to allow the applicant the opportunity to come back with a solar plan.
No, I would be okay for applicant to come back and work it out with staff along with their approvals. But the direction to staff would be that they come back with a significant solar plan. And so it would not need to come back to us or anyone else.
I guess, Madam Chair, the concern I would have with that condition would be that it's not very specific. It just says, I assume install solar to be worked out with staff. I don't know if that would necessarily be specific enough to provide staff the guidance in order to work out a solar plan.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I ask the city attorney a question real quick?
Yes.
Mr. Priest, does it matter that the CUP and the building itself are two different review processes, given that Section 94.04.01, subsection B, 3, C, and D gives staff the review of the buildings, gives staff the authority to review the buildings, and that what is before the commission tonight is CUP for the use. Does that matter?
Yeah.
My concern is that staff has the authority to review the administrative elements of this project. I don't know that staff has the authority to impose a rooftop solar condition of this nature. That would be something that the Planning Commission, if it were authorized to do so, or the council could ultimately do through policy, as I have been suggesting. I don't know that staff has the authority to impose or flesh out this solar condition that way.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Robertson was referring to is that under the city's zoning code, staff has the authority to approve agricultural facilities as an administrative process. So the process that we're reviewing tonight is the conditional use permit to operate it as a cannabis facility. So in other words, if the applicant chose to bring forward just an application to build the shell of an agricultural facility, that could be approved at the staff level. And that was something that was established by council years ago when we were approving, or we were trying to encourage agricultural facilities in the northerly part of the city. So that process is still in place. So the application before the commission tonight is really the conditional use permit to establish the use, the cultivation use, and the impacts that are associated with it.
So you didn't bring the CUP, you brought the building, and Commissioner Song's amendments relate to the building. It relates to trash, it relates to parapet, and to landscape maintenance plans. So I believe you brought the building to us as well as the CUP. And I'd like to hold on to that. I think what I'm going to do, I did not hear Commissioner Song or Commissioner Maruzzi agree to the amendment. So I'm going to have, we're going to call the question without this. Without the rooftop solar. Can
I do not accept the amendment recommendation because I equally believe that this building should have solar. And Mr. Gary LaSalle, your last name is LaSalle. That's what you do. You do solar. And it's disappointing that it has not been integrated to the building design. However, we need to work within the findings and policy of an umbrella in which we could impose that requirement. And I don't feel confident that we have that. And I wish that we had the wisdom to come up with that after our last project and say, wait, hold on, let's work on a policy where dispensary or industrial projects should require renewable systems because of their usage to our natural resources.
So we do not have so we have a motion in front of us. We have a second on the motion. I'm going to go into policy after we call the roll on this, but I'd like to call the question.
So hold on one second, Chair. So we're going with the motion that was presented by you or by
the motion that was presented by Commissioner Song, and that had three components: the parapet, the landscape maintenance plan, and the trash facilities. And we're going to have to take a second vote on, I believe we have to take a vote on the mitigated negative deck.
Okay, so not the solar.
So this does not include the solar, but it will include some discussion after this about how we get to an envelope that could include solar.
But not for this project.
Not for this project. And just to speak, I agree with Commissioner Song. We had a large project 2 weeks ago where we didn't raise the same issue with that project and didn't do that. So I think, I would like to see solar in this, very much would like to see solar, but I'd like to also make sure we have the authority to impose that.
Madam Chair, you could ask the applicant if they'd be willing to do that as a part of, before you make your decision.
And for the applicant, you hear the passion related to solar here. Would you be willing to maximize the solar that's possible on your rooftop of the building?
So as far as solar going on the rooftop, the way our business model is, and I appreciate everybody's opinions on, you know, large buildings being cooled by cooling towers, and it's perfectly fine, but those large buildings also aren't indoor agricultural buildings either. So there's different facets within our industry that we, which are very successful at, choose to use the equipment that works best for us. So mounting solar on the roof is not an option for us. Mounting solar in a carport, in some parking areas that we have available, definitely willing to take a look at it. Definitely willing to take a look at it. Can't guarantee it, because again, as Jay was referring to, the cost associated with installing solar of a magnitude to fill up your parking lot per se of, I'm just using round figures, $2 million to offset 5% of your energy use. It's tough to squeeze. It's tough to squeeze. And it's been a while, I won't kid you, that I looked into the economics on facilities of our size with the amount of power that's being used. It's not far off. So would I be willing to look into it? Absolutely. Got my word on that, without a doubt. I just don't know how the economics are going to play for us on that.
That isn't an answer. That's a no.
I don't think it was a no. I was just saying that I would be looking at.
That's not a yes.
What was your question? Exact question.
My exact question is, if you have any area on the rooftop where you could mount solar or in your parking lot, are you willing to do it?
All I can say is I'd look into it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Sorry. There's a lot more than that goes into a solar system than just saying, yeah, I'm willing to go and throw up, several, 100 feet of carport with solar on it and so on and so forth. There's economics that go into it as well. There's the facility power that's going to be brought into these facilities that there's a lot of other legwork that needs to be done before I can give you a yes or no answer on that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Song, is your motion still on the table?
I could adjust it to say that the commission strongly recommends applicant to look into bringing a solar system into the project, but not make it into a condition.
Mr. Maruzzi, do you second that?
Yes.
Can we call the question?
Commissioner Song,
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi,
Yes.
Chair Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
No.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
No.
and Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-2. Thank you. Let's.
Thank you, everybody.
Invite us to your opening. What I would like to do is go into what we can do for solar for commercial buildings and open that discussion. Can staff lay out a plan for us to do that?
Chair, I think that's putting staff on the spot. I think they should come back to us with something. They need
That's
to think
what I'm
about it.
asking.
Oh, I thought you meant to discuss it right now.
No, I meant, can they come back to us with a
Oh,
plan?
yeah.
Meeting?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, we can certainly schedule for a future agenda, a discussion on this matter.
And in the interim, I would like, possibly we can chat with members of council to see if they in fact do have a policy on this. And staff would look into whether there has been any policy on commercial.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, we would look at obviously the general plan and then the sustainability plans that we have. So those would be the first resources that we would look at, as well as obviously the state law requirements and allowances.
And we certainly have an item and a goal for the general plan to add to our goals for the general plan.
Certainly could add that.
Okay, moving, is Miss Goodhart still here?
Yes, I'm still there.
We had asked the city council to look at the cannabis issue and the cannabis enforcement issue because we were concerned that we were putting conditions that weren't being enforced. And the city council has voted to have two cannabis people in code enforcement. Ms. Goodhart has been raising funds and planning the training, and possibly you can tell us what we can anticipate.
So what council approved with the budget is the addition of 2 dedicated code officers. Those officers will be dedicated strictly to code enforcement for cannabis related issues. However, all code officers will be trained on cannabis, and we did secure grant funding to assist with the training costs. So that is a huge benefit for the city. Additionally, and specific to odor, and I think which is very important for planning, is council also agreed us expanding our services with 15,000 each. So what they had proposed to us in the past is inspection and certification services, where they would have both an administrative and physical program for odor enforcement. So they're going to be able to author our inspections for the cannabis odor control enforcement. They're going to be able to work with staff to train them to do these inspections. They'll assist with 3, 6, 12 months post-occupancy inspections to ensure that they are indeed in compliance with the plans that they provided. So this will be an expansion. It's strictly for enforcement and compliance services. So we did receive a proposal last May, and I will be in touch with Jay and Matt to ensure that we can still do this to that same extent, if not even more, to ensure, because he's been to so many meetings, he knows what your concerns and needs are. So we want to make sure that we have the expertise to not just go to the facilities and see if the equipment's there, but know that it's operating functionally, and that it, if something changes with technology, that we're on top of it and can make those recommendations if need be to improve what is already being done.
And you're also going to be looking at the security plans and making sure that the other conditions that have been imposed are also being enforced?
Correct. So what we will be bringing to council in the next couple of months is a list of, it's actually 65 different identifiable code violations from our municipal code that our cannabis code enforcement will be responsible for. And it covers everything from day-to-day operations to odor control to security. So it's really going to ensure that these businesses are operating as they should.
Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
And when you get to that, can you also come back and inform us as to what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Irvin, questions?
Yeah, so with the positions, will they, as you guys look at the background of the employee who's applying for the position, will they have to have prior experience dealing with something like this, or what are the expectations that you guys are having for the new hires?
It always is nice to have that experience. And we actually have a code officer on staff right now who worked in Desert Hot Springs and it has experience with their cannabis industry. So if we can find more officers like him, that is always a benefit. However, we do plan to provide training, like I said, to all code to ensure that they have the abilities to do this. And we will be working specifically with 15,000 for the odor control aspect of it.
And how soon do you expect to have those positions? I mean, where the applicants can fill out that process? When is that?
The recruitment hasn't even been posted. So we're going with HR to have it posted. The sooner the better. I have worked with some of our code officers now to begin our, just some random inspections for compliance. But we're hoping to have our new agreement with 15,000 after July, the new fiscal year. And then we'll begin all the training. And as soon as we can schedule it and make sure that they understand what they're doing, move forward with it.
And who will be supervising them? Will you be involved in that?
It will primarily be police, but I do plan and hope to work with them to develop a cannabis officer, code response officer protocol like we have for vacation rentals. So that is the goal, to really have a say in what needs to be done and where we can find the resources for that training and, author those inspection lists and so forth.
Thank you. On a slightly different note, are you satisfied with the work that is being done on the ANZA project to bring it into compliance? And
I know they've been working very diligently on it. I know it's a very large project and very costly. They have been very agreeable. And I know Jay could speak more to that. I mean, I think they are doing everything that they can.
And are you comfortable with that?
I am with the direction they'll ultimately be in. Yes, they got a long way to go between now and then. And Gary said it perfectly. They're going to want to do it as they are operational. So it'll probably take the full extent of the permit time. But yeah, I'm pleased with the direction they're heading. They've been very receptive with our change.
One question is letting them be operational since they've been so out of compliance and really detrimental to the health of an entire neighborhood.
What was the question?
I think that's really a discussion that would have to be had outside of this meeting because it's more of a policy decision and
right.
I don't think it's something that I can weigh in on at this time.
That makes sense. I just wanted to express a concern that this is a long-term process because it's gone on for many years that a whole neighborhood has been impacted by the odors from that facility. So thank you. Thank you very much. Moving right along to planning, we have no unfinished business, no new business. Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would suggest that the Planning Commission send a note to City Council asking that they take up the issue of solar power for commercial buildings for policy consideration. And obviously at the same time, staff will be doing research on this. That research, City Council will ask for that research anyway, but I think it would be meaningful if we sent a direct request for that and to have this agendized as soon as possible.
Do we have agreement on that, Commissioner Song?
Yes, and Commissioner Roberts, also, could we make emphasis for the Sustainability Commission, because the Sustainability Commission, because they also should be front running on this very important policy.
Absolutely, and I think council would probably in this situation send this to sustainability. but I think this needs to be a top-down situation. So absolutely, we should include that, but I think council would do that naturally.
Should I reach out to Sustainability Commission liaison or contact, or maybe David, and then sound as if, not sound, but come to the council as if both commissions agree?
What I will do is send a note and then stay up till 9 o'clock tomorrow night and put in a comment that the Planning Commission is requesting this. Is that agreeable to the commission?
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Madam Chair.
I think you're
Commissioner,
being optimistic with the 9 p.m., by the way.
yes. The last time I commented, I think the 9 p.m. comment period was 10:30. Commissioner Hirschbein, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just the all-important question of when we're returning to chambers.
I had an informal discussion with the new city manager, and they were saying something like the fall, end of summer, but they were also trying to look at a hybrid system where you could have both in-person attendance and the public could also come in through Zoom or a phone or the phone call system and or comment. And I don't know if they've resolved that. Do you know, David?
No, and I suspect it, like you say, it probably would happen after the when we go dark in August, so that we can get all that in place.
But I'd love to see all of you again in person. We also, David, do you want to mention the new planning, the interviews? I think I mentioned that informally.
Yeah, I can do that when we're through with commission comments. And
Are there commission comments and questions, other ones? Directors' reports.
just a couple of things. So since we met last, the council did have a meeting, and on June 10th, they did adopt the downtown Palm Springs specific plan review process changes consistent with your recommendation. So the specific plan now includes, as you recall, a study session with the AAC and Planning Commission before the formal application is processed. So that will be the new process for the downtown specific plan. The council also discussed the parklets and outdoor dining spaces in private parking spaces. So they've given us some direction there. So staff is forming a committee to provide some direction and guidance on those standards. And so these are for ones that we would have as permanent installations. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of months with which we will take back to the council for final acceptance. But in the meantime, we still will see parklets per their direction to allow kind of some additional time for those who have invested money and time in doing some of the ones that we have now. We are trying to clean up some that we know are not being used. So there have been some that have been, the K-rails have been removed in certain locations because they just weren't being used. So trying to clean up ones that we think aren't being used, and then trying to set up standards for the future of parklets. It seems like those are very popular. So those are really the things that I just wanted to mention about the last council meeting. upcoming meetings, the council will be talking about the Andes, formerly Andes of Palm Springs Hotel at Alejo and Palm Canyon. The subcommittee had met after we met the last meeting on 2 occasions. And at the second occasion, the second meeting, the subcommittee recommended approval unanimously. And so those recommendations were included in the staff report for council consideration, as well as the draft resolution for adoption should the council approve the project. So we did give the council both the plans that the Planning Commission saw at your last meeting, and then the plans that the subcommittee saw on June 16th. So they have copies of that. They have the recommendations of the subcommittee. So they'll be considering that tomorrow night. They'll also be considering extending the CUP for the well in the desert for an additional 3 months until the city can finalize the agreement on the new location for the well in the desert. So that is a CUP that will be considered for, it was initially required that it be revoked after June 30th, but because we weren't able to come to an agreement with the new location, the council will consider extending that on through September. And then lastly, just that the council will be looking or be doing interviews for both Planning Commission and Historic Site Preservation Board on July 1st. So that agenda was just published today if anyone is interested. So that's all I have relative to the council. For our upcoming meeting in July, we will have a busy agenda. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So we might be here pretty late that night because we have a lot of items to discuss. So with that, I'll conclude.
I forgot to ask the subcommittee to give a very short report on what they did. They did a marvelous job. Thank you, Maria and JR. Do you want to talk just a little bit about what you did and recommended?
Maria, do you want to start and I'll fill in?
Sure. We looked specifically at the east facade, both from the street level as well as the upper levels. And JR was instrumental by comparing it to the facade on Palm Canyon because we were able to see that the comparison in such way that Indian Canyon was still not addressed as a part of the downtown street. So with that attitude from them to see that, they were able to clean up a lot of the massing and making it more, I think, presentable rather being choppy. They took care of the comments that Commissioner Hirschbein also brought up. And I think starting from the south side on the east elevation, they have now continuous bristle-A. The stair tower looks more as a mass, and then they also have a bristle-A for second, third, and fourth floor that is only on one face. They were able to clean up really the Indian Canyon entrance by bringing or showing us that they have an art wall. And then they also cleaned up where the mechanical enclosures are. So now it looks as if it was an outdoor structure rather than half outdoor, half indoor. They also cleaned up the ramps, and then going all the way north towards the north side, we were able to help them clean up a lot of the eyebrows and then the proportion. And then again, Commissioner Roberts be able to bring in the importance of urban scale and human scale, and the fact that it's adjacent to the park where we have the Renaissance festivals, or we have so many events on that little park. And so therefore bring some site furniture and pots and plants that are more to human scale. So overall, they were very cooperative and also in a hurry to get us to say yes so they can move on to city council. So it was a very great effort. And then having also Kathy there to chaperone us in have us make the final decision was also helpful because, you know, I can get just going on and I can start looking at the pavers.
Maria nailed it. I would only add that it's a better building, and we had a mutual goal of getting, well, and based also on comments from the entire commission, we got the Indian Canyon side not feeling like a back alley. You know, this building is so important as you come into town from both Pump Canyon and now Indian Canyon. It's a building that probably has higher visibility than almost any other building in town at this point, because it's now seen on a regular basis on all three sides. And Maria was great in creating continuity of their architecture, which was broken up. And ultimately, they were very receptive. It was very successful working with them because they were open to it. And I think their architect understood that the building was still a mess. And I don't know that the developer had given the architects the time they needed to clean that building up properly. And I think because of our request, it gave them the time. So they took all of our comments to heart, and we've got a much better building coming out of it. And they were just as excited about it. So at the end of the day, it worked well.
You also made a much more pedestrian facade along both Indian Canyon and facing the park. And the area facing the park was really cleaned up as well.
And I want to add my appreciation to the subcommittee because I was out of town for the last Planning Commission meeting, and I was concerned about the issues we had raised previously. So thank you both, all three of you, for doing that.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you too.
Are there David, would you please, two of us, Commissioner Irvin, I believe, attended one of the neighborhood sessions on the housing element and the general plan, and I attended a different one. Commissioner Irvin, I was just wondering if there isn't an additional one on Monday night, but would you like to add anything about the meeting that you attended?
The interesting thing is the one that I went to, the speaking was in Spanish. So I had a little bit of a hard time understanding it. It was at Vista del Monte. It was a pretty good turnout. They had some pretty interesting questions about some of the trailer parks there in Santiago. You know, I tried to do as best as I could, but you know, I wish I should have went to the one that was in English, but you know, I just wanted to attend one. I probably will be attending the one in Desert Highland. So hopefully I'll get a little bit more out of this.
David, the one I attended was sparsely attended with people who are very involved in the city, but David had done a great job of the questions he was asking and bringing the issues to more of a neighborhood level, both social justice and housing. And one of the takeaways from it was that we got very few questions on health, like health facilities. There were a lot of issues raised around transportation. The bus system being totally inadequate to get people where they needed to go, and if they needed the bus to pick up food, and to get to work, it wasn't functional. Not as much feedback on housing itself, I think, because the few people who were there were well housed. But I thought it was a really good presentation. I just wish it hadn't been 123 out, and that more people had been able to attend. It was nice to see people in person,
Yeah.
real human beings.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't had a high rate of registration, but what's been great is that even though people haven't registered, some have still been showing up. So that's been good. We wanted to limit it to no more than 30 people. So certainly we haven't reached that capacity at the 3 we've had thus far, but we are still getting some feedback, and it is good feedback. And it's interesting because it's a mixture of different feedback. Each meeting has been a little bit different, but some of the same issues have been brought up at each of the meetings thus far. So look forward to what we hear on Monday night too.
Thank
And
you.
Kathy, if I can add, the at the Vista Del Monte one, they did happen to bring up healthcare a little bit towards the end. They just were interested in having some healthcare on the northern end of the town.
And because there aren't the urgent care and facilities on the northern end of town. I also heard that there weren't parks, and an awful lot of concern about the condition of the trailer parks on the north end of town.
Yeah.
And also they had spoke a little bit about having some issues with being able to gather. So I think inside of the trailer park, they have a meeting area, but I think it's not suitable or doesn't have proper restrooms and things like that for them to meet. So the people that were there were asking if there was any way possible to have some sort of a way where they can meet to maybe discuss different topics and things that they need, and also be included in neighborhood organizations and different meetings that the neighborhood has.
Community spaces was a request up in the north side.
And they're not a member of 1PS. They haven't been included in the local neighborhoods, have they?
No, I don't think so.
That's important. Well, good work, David. Thank you for spending your evenings, your days planning it, and your evenings conducting meetings.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
I just want to tell them thank you too, also for having it in Spanish. I don't think we've done that before. And, that's something that the city should really take into consideration. We have a pretty large population of Hispanics in our city. So thank you for that.
We did do the district meetings and the maps in Spanish. So this is, I think, the second of these meetings, of this type of meeting that's been done in Spanish.
Commissioner Irvin, my advice is whenever you're in a situation where you don't understand the language, just nod vigorously. And then it looks like you're really paying attention.
I did. I was just kind of watching the hand movement, to know if they were excited or not. And then I could tell if it was something that they were having a real discussion about. But
that's good.
I just wanted to be involved in something and just kind of go to one of the meetings.
Oh, that's good. It's really great.
With that, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting until 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 14th. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Right.